Welcome back to The Line. The 60-day session of the legislature ends on March 18th. That leaves legislators with just about a week to get bills through. Even if bills do pass both houses, there is still the chance the governor will veto the legislation, of course. And getting support on both sides of the aisle, this has been a tricky one. The issue of raising the minimum wage. The House of Representatives voted last week to raise the hourly rate to $9.25, and the Senate passed a proposal that would increase it to $9. Eric Riego, we haven't seen a minimum wage increase up in here in a long time. But something seems to be happening, a little bit of momentum here. And I offered this. I ran into Sherman McCorkle from the Greater Albuquerque Chamber not too long ago, and they were actually willing to do a negotiated agreement on a minimum wage across the state so there'd be certainty amongst municipalities. That's a fundamental change for the chamber and a lot of other folks. What do you think of the chances are this year?
Well, there's multiple bills that are actually in play. The highest one that actually has any legs is really the House bill, the Speaker's bill, which is 925. It does have some preemption language in there, which means that it opens the door for municipalities to be shut out of the process. It's been very sort of narrowed, but it's still in the bill. The Senate bill, which also has some traction, is Senator Clemente Sanchez's bill, which is $9, but it has a training wage, which would be $8 an hour, which also is problematic, right? Because even if we get the 925, and even if they get the governor to sign it, nobody thinks they're going to get indexing, meaning we're not going to be able to continue to raise it. So it sounds like, and it probably is a victory, but it is a very sort of hollow victory, because when you just do the math, full-time person. And increasingly, if you look at the data, these are not entry-level jobs. These are jobs that single moms have, that people who are trying to support their families have. And even if it's $9.25, you're talking just south of 20 grand a year.
What's your personal number? What would work for you? Is it 15 an hour, 18 an hour?
Well, 15 hours has happened in a lot of communities, you know, and you have some folks that really scares them, but you know, it's all a question of your economic philosophy. If you think demand side really is what drives economies and getting people out of poverty. But even if we couldn't get there, and we could there was a bill, Miguel Garcia, my state rep, had a bill that was 1010. We were going to try to index that. So if you just look at the poverty level, it's somewhere in the $20,000 to $25,000 a year mark. You know, you need to be at least the $12 to $13 level first. Do
the math backwards.
Yeah. So either index it up, but everything I'm hearing is the governor is not willing to sign. She may not even sign a $9 bill, but I think that there is. To their credit, some of the leadership in the business community has said, look, this is important that we do this. People are living in poverty and working full time. Many families in this, the myth in New Mexico is these are folks sitting around. In fact, the overwhelming majority of folks below the poverty level have at least one full-time worker in a household.
It's the old sauce, Janice. You know, for a lot of us in our community, an extra $150 a month is a ton of dough. Do you know what I mean? It means something, even though it might mean everything to everything watching, but you know what I'm saying. So is this an evolution we're watching here? Is something going to be happening that New Mexico is going to have a minimum wage increase in your?
Well, having watched the debate on Senator Sanchez's bill, I think this bill has tremendous traction. And I think the part that the business community liked was exactly that, the training wage. The challenge is, like everything else we've discussed today, our economy is changing dramatically. And while I can make the argument that if you increase the minimum wage, the chances are you're going to eliminate jobs, but those jobs may be eliminated by technology anyway. So we need to figure out another way to do business.
That's right.
So I actually think that there is a very good chance this year that bill, more than Brian Egoff's bill, has a chance of getting through. And I'm just looking at the votes in the Senate. It was 24-6, so where was everybody? But it was clearly a mix, clearly a mix.
That's interesting, that vote count, by the way. That nose count's very interesting. What do you think, Tom? You know, from a PR standpoint, it puts us on a par with, you know, some other states, some others are well beyond $9 an hour, but it gets us in the game. You know what I mean? It gets us in the games a little bit.
And it does provide a certain amount of legitimacy for New Mexico to show that, you know, we're not going to just, you know, because it's always been at that level, we're always going to have it at that level.
Right.
And so, you know, it shows that, you know, perhaps it's a first step of showing how, you know, New Mexico is serious about business and not just helping, you know, businesses through different tax breaks and incentives, but also helping its residents as well by increasing that minimum wage. Whether $15 is reasonable or $9, you know, that's for elected minds to really debate. But it sounds like, based on the last time this topic came up, that the governor, who has been rather vocal on the whole issue, at least provided some insights that, you know, certain levels that there would be an opportunity for a nod.
That's right.
But I don't think we've seen that yet.
That's right. Sophie, on this one, and we'll move on to some other things too, but I think back to when Santa Fe kicked off its minimum wage and all the predictions of gloom and doom and how businesses were going to close across the board. Has that had an influence on our thinking about the minimum wage now?
Now, taking it a step further, that Santa Fe has not shut down.
Right.
As a result of increasing their minimum wage. And I think there's a healthy debate over the effective minimum wage increases, but what we're tending to see is that increased circulation of funds to people who are going to spend it right away has a net positive impact on the economy, that is the trickle up, the opposite of what Reagan promised us. It's the trickle up that actually does help our economy, and I think Santa Fe, yes, there have been businesses that have struggled, but we've also come through in general a tough economic time, and it can be difficult to kind of tease out. Let me put it this way. It's difficult to make the case that the increase in the minimum wage is the reason that businesses are doing badly when you have everything else that's happened in the New Mexico economy.
Good point.
What we have instead is that people who are in Santa Fe and other parts of the state where we've seen the increases, people who are working full-time jobs or working part-time jobs are making something closer to the value of the work that they're doing. As opposed to being stuck at levels that, that really raise questions about, is it worth it for me to go to work? And one other thing I want to add, there's this discussion right now about how we fund our prisons, our judicial system, our law enforcement, et cetera. What we know is that when there are well-paying jobs in a state or in a community, there is a decrease in crime. It costs us, I think it's like 40 grand to put somebody in prison for a year. Right. And we're saying at 22 grand, that's too much money to pay somebody to do a job. And I'm not saying that low-wage workers equal prisoners in any way. I'm saying when we look at the two, which one is the smarter investment for our state?
That's right. Whether it's short-term or long-term, that's for sure. Janice Arnold-Jones, I want to bring up something you clued us in on Monday in our email exchange, is the dummy bill. This is an interesting thing. We had a follow-up story in the Journal this week as well. I need you to help us out here. What is a dummy bill, and why do people do this, given we have a short window to take care of our business here?
Well, I see. So let me start off by saying that there is a legitimate reason to have a dummy bill.
Okay.
And so how it works mechanically is all the bills are introduced, and it used to be they were 900 level bills, but now we don't have that many bills. So in the House they begin at 511 and the Senate at 438.
Okay.
So these are an extra set of bills. So you need to know that in your legislature, the leadership and the committee chairs are all assigned X amount of dummy bills. Now, there are times in the legislature where you will get two bills. Eric and I could both put in bills about the minimum wage that, quite frankly, we agree upon, but they don't stand by themselves. But we can't actually go forward because the titles are different.
I see.
Can't do that. And so you actually need to have a way to actually combine them. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is putting dummy bills up there, sending them to committee, and they've been heard and are on the way to the floor before the people ever get to see it on the website.
Gotcha.
That's what I have a
Essentially
problem with.
What you're
Gotcha.
saying is a dummy bill is like a placeholder bill.
It is a placeholder.
We know we're going to need to put something probably in here. We have to meet a deadline, so we're going to put a placeholder in, and then we're going to develop it after the deadline.
Exactly.
Is that right? Okay.
Exactly. But the problem we're having this session is that while technology has moved forward, you will still see for the public welfare, I forget what the statement is.
Health, wealth, and public safety or
Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly when you have a bill that you need a placeholder for, you have the content. It is not hard to post the content. And that is my objection to what we are doing, is people are being cut out of the system. And I will just say, as a transparency advocate, transparency is only as good as the weakest link. This is a very weak link.
Good point.
I agree with Janice on the transparency issue. So the whole point is there's a deadline mid-session, about the 16th, I think it was this year, February, and you can't introduce bills after that. So if they're, that's a pretty, it sounds like a long window, but if there's something that really, minimum wage, in fact, predatory lending is a good issue, right? The proposal sort of didn't make it, and there was a reintroduction of a very similar proposal to try to get it back on the table. So if we're transparent about it and it really solves a problem, I mean, there's nothing magical about the midterm date other than it helps people sort of get their bills
sense.
introduced.
Sure.
But it's been used in a couple of ways. A lot of people don't know this, but Senator Aragon, when he was up there, used these masterfully, and it's how we got the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Commission, for example. It was done very late. It was rushed through the system. Not a lot of transparency. We were all caught flat-footed, and it went through. Not that we would have had the
I
ability
would say,
to
no,
get-
it came to my committee at 11 o'clock at night, and Dan Silva and I were the only ones going, don't do this, please.
Yeah, and it's, and some of us think it was a really bad idea. So, and full disclosure, I carried a dummy bill that when I was on Senator Feldman's committee in the public affairs, and you get a couple of these. She gave me one on predatory lending, which we tried sneaking in because we couldn't get any of those bills out of the first committee.
Now, we're down to about 20 seconds. Is it about the use of dummy bills or the actual circumstance of them that's the problem? It sounds like it's an okay tool, except if you misuse it, right?
Well,
I mean,
I'm saying one of the rules, and I have to, and I'm not up on the Senate rules, but in the House, there is a rule, if a bill has been introduced and it dies,
Okay.
you cannot introduce it again in the same session. And unfortunately, that is happening this year. And that is contrary to all the House rules. I don't know about the Senate rules, but
Just a quick prediction, because I know we're on that
okay.
on that edge. But
Yeah.
I would bet that there's a budget bill that comes out of the Senate Finance Committee under the guise of one of these dummy bills that will be the savior in the last-minute vote, because it has happened before.
That's right. There you go. Now, when we come back to the line, we'll look at higher education here in New Mexico and whether or not it is in a state of crisis.